7 days. But first, we want to chat about a relatively busy final day of the summer transfer window. Miguel Delaney, chief football writer with the London Independent, is with us. Miguel, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. I mean, it was a busy day, but I suppose there were no. I mean, it seems like it's reaching a bit of a climax in Spain, and it's quite busy there. But as for today in England, I don't think there's been much that we didn't really expect or didn't know. And so it doesn't look like the transfer window is going to have the big sensation at the end, which I think a lot of people expected it to be, with Kylian Mbappe maybe going to Real Madrid just to top off the moves of kind of Ronaldo, Messi. But like the latest is that Paris Saint-Germain have rejected a €200 million bid.
Yeah, like we may as well go straight in on that then, Miguel. If you're Paris Saint-Germain, I mean, the answer to this question is kind of obvious on one level. Like, why don't you take that money? Because they're Paris Saint-Germain, obviously. I mean, Real Madrid had a chance of losing a game of chicken here in spectacular fashion had Paris Saint-Germain accepted that bid, I suspect, earlier on.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay.
I think Madrid would take him now. I mean, because if you think about it, they've refurbished the stadium, and basically, for Madrid, they've got no stars to fill it. Okay, Hazard is there, but I mean, given the the sort of clips that have gone viral on social media and all the rest of it, doesn't feel like Hazard is that popular. He hasn't done much at in his 2 years at the club now. So they are kind of, and the Spanish league in general is crying out for that star. So I think they would have done it for the right price. I do also agree that it's probably primarily posturing that they would, I mean, it suits him to get on a free, but it still feels a little bit hollow without him. And I think the more interesting thing is maybe, and the more conspicuous thing or instructive thing about this market is that Paris Saint-Germain could say no. I mean, bar Manchester City, maybe Chelsea. Although Chelsea are too kind of efficient with this sort of thing. I mean, in fact, they sold Hazard in a similar situation. There's barely a club that would a player who's with a year left in his contract, absolutely refusing to sign one, made it clear he's going. No one would turn down €200 million, no matter who he is. But Paris Saint-Germain, because they're essentially a state project, well, not essentially, they're a state project, they don't have to turn it down. And that's, I mean, all the sensations in the window that, let's be honest, I suppose we've all been kind of, salivating about or raising our eyebrows about or getting excited about, they're all basically from this same group of super clubs. Most of them would have tried to get into the Super League or been broached again at a later point, given some of the discussion out there about Paris Saint-Germain and the way their rejection of the Super League has been portrayed. And it is kind of just, continuously funneling top-class football down this angle. And even I saw, there's a contact of mine made an interesting point about the Messi Ronaldo moves. Maybe still the two best players in the world. Certainly the two best players of the last 15 years. Legendary status, all the rest of it. And
theory that is ridiculous, obviously. But then there are things that the transfer market can tell us about the reality of football. And what you just said there is exactly it. We have seen the transfer market tell us how the tectonic plates have shifted in European football and where the power now lies. So, is it fair to say, with the exception of Paris Saint-Germain and their spending on Messi, that the Premier League have taken a vice-like grip on the power of Europe?
Well, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's something I've been thinking of ahead of the Champions League starting. But the Spanish league has now basically, what's really happened there is it suffered a fall, and quite a drastic fall, in the same way that Serie A did at the start of this millennium. And now, from talking to people in the game who work, especially in these sort of areas and kind of commercial partnerships with leagues, all the rest of it, they basically point out, because of that last broadcasting deal, or not the last one, but the one in 2015, the Premier League almost has an unassailable position. And it has such a position of strength and financial strength, and it's kind of got a self-perpetuating thing in terms of the global contracts, that it's hard to see. I mean, again, maybe no one would have thought the same about Spain 5-10 years ago, but it's hard to see how it can suffer the fall that Italy and Spain did. And we've got a consequence now where the Champions League, it feels like it's going to be a group of English clubs with maybe a few satellite clubs like Paris Saint-Germain, like Bayern Munich, maybe Juventus. We'll see how they get on in the adaptation from Ronaldo, and we'll see what happens with the Spanish clubs as well. But certainly, the strength of Paris Saint-Germain and the core English clubs is undeniable. So yeah, it does speak to that. I mean, part of the exact same process actually, because I mean, what's happened in the global game is because football has been so unregulated, and because it's basically adopted the most capitalistic approaches at every turn. Basically, the most famous names get more attention. That greater global attention brings in more money. These clubs consolidate their position, they buy better players, and on and on and on until we have this situation where these clubs have reached such a size. And it does feel like, well, I mean, we can all understand with a transfer window, the very idea of signing a new player, it's exciting. It's why we watch football, because there's something, it represents an element of hope, optimism. But it does feel like the way this whole... And again, it's kind of ironic that Sky's coverage transfer deadline day was one of the initial sparks for this that created this whole behemoth around it. But it's kind of evolved into something else where kind of even Sky on deadline day are almost an irrelevance because they're behind social media. But it does feel like there's almost this kind of the business of the transfer market and the media business of the transfer market where it's almost like some sort of kind of celebrity coverage separate to football. That like it's and I think it's one of the developments that isn't particularly nice or beneficial for the game either.
No, I'd agree with you. It's very conspicuous as well, certainly over the last 2 or 3 transfer windows. Just on a couple of specific things then. Manchester United, why didn't they sign a midfielder during this window?
Well, from what and again, this comes exactly what we're talking about. United, from what I'm told, Solskjaer is desperate for one. He wants a number 6. He wants a specific profile. So even they passed on Bissouma at Brighton. Sorry, not they pass on. They didn't go for Bissouma at Brighton because they like him, but they feel he's more of a kind of a box-to-box player rather than the specific type of controller they need, because Pogba can't play that role. From what I'm told, there's been a little bit of frustration from Solskjaer's part. There hasn't been that many targets they've come up with, and the obvious one is Declan Rice. Now, West Ham, Declan Rice actually in a similar situation to Harry Kane. He signed a long contract at his club. He has family members working as part of his camp, as they say. And it means that West Ham can very easily set a price of 100 million and under no pressure to sell. So Manchester United, from what I'm told, it's a little bit like the Jadon Sancho situation last year, where they'll wait another year, try and get a better deal then. But for the moment, everyone thinks Declan Rice will go to Manchester United. But it's interesting then that they don't have the budget for Declan Rice or another number 6, even if they could do a Leicester and with something creative, or not creative, but kind of properly unearth a player who's going to be a real talent.
Could they not have done that this year, Miguel?
Sorry?
Could they not have, like, when you talk about unearthing a real talent for the future, was like, I mean, it's very easy to say this about like Saul, who's not someone for the future, but Camavinga, who is someone for the future.
Well,
like it.
Sorry, Darren Camavinga, he didn't want to go to England.
Fair.
So
Okay.
I think they were out of the race there. And even actually, I'm not sure he's exactly the profile they would have wanted either. But again, just in terms of Rice, if he's the one they're set on, why there's no budget for Rice, but then they've got this budget for Ronaldo. Now I know there's all this sort of argument that the fee for Ronaldo isn't great, but his wages are going to be huge. Like, I mean, even if some of them are kind of loaded on bonuses, they're still. I mean, the likelihood is those bonuses are there for a reason, structured that way for a reason, and the likelihood is you're going to have to pay them. So again, it does feel like a certain amount of fixation on celebrity rather than team building, and just in relation to United. It does feel like, I mean, I've said on the show many times, I'd have reservations about Solskjaer as a coach, but then I still actually have reservations about Zidane as a coach. He managed to win 3 Champions Leagues with Ronaldo, and not necessarily an idea of football, as they say. So, a certain amount of celebrity purchasing, it will get you up there. But the one I would have sympathy for Solskjaer in the sense that it seems like we have the same conversation every year with Manchester United, where they're always left one position short. They don't just go out and complete the team, and it's always next year. And I think we saw from the Wolves game on Sunday that if they persist with these midfield options, there's going to be a lot of helter-skelter matches. And they even with Ronaldo there, they may not necessarily overcome them as often. I mean, the Ronaldo one is interesting as well, because I would have a sympathy for the argument from Italy that Ronaldo will still score, but that doesn't necessarily make the team as a whole more attacking, which is basically what happened with Juventus. And I wonder whether he's going to cannibalize Bruno Fernandes's space. The other thing about Ronaldo is he funnels you into a certain way of playing, which is basically towards him. So again, I mean, so it's an interesting one. I think where there's almost kind of a cost-benefit analysis. He'll score you a lot of goals, but there are some compromises necessary for that.
It's interesting that you said that Solskjaer himself is desperate for the number 6. Solskjaer has spoken absolutely gloriously about Cristiano Ronaldo. Don't get me wrong here. Of course, he wants him, but I mean, is there something going on above Solskjaer's head in terms of the priority of the signings at the club?
To be fair, I think with the Ronaldo one, it was more an opportunity presented itself. I don't think they were going to spend unless they came across a deal for number 6, and then Ronaldo. From what I'm told, from some people who would know, you can probably read it with the situation. I don't think they would have gone for, if Ronaldo had the possibility of him going to City not been broached. If that's the case, it's basically it's an agent masterclass from George Mendes.
Absolutely. We should mention as well that it looks like Antoine Griezmann is back at Atletico Madrid. You mentioned celebrity journalists earlier. There was a certain celebrity journalist saying, "Here we go," on Antoine Griezmann this evening.
I've no time for that nonsense.
Possibly a conversation for another day, Miguel, because we've only got 3 minutes or so left. I just want to talk about Harry Kane because he's done an interview on TalkSport today saying that anybody who's involved in the football industry knows the ins and outs, and I was calm with the situation. It was between me and the club. When you know the truth and you know what is going on, your conscience is clear. So Harry Kane has said that his conscience is clear over the last little while. This is going to be a very interesting set of circumstances in the background over the course of the next year. The circumstances around Kylian Mbappe, the circumstances around Harry Kane. What do you think is going to happen, or what do you know is certainly going to be attempted with regards to the future of Harry Kane over the next few months?
Well, I think Harry Kane's chance is gone. I wouldn't say that with 100% certainty, Eoin, but I do think and I think that explains some of the actions this summer. But of course, it doesn't. It's hard to have too much sympathy for him, given he did sign a 6-year contract. So he has an obligation to Spurs. That's what he committed to. But I mean, if you look at it, this summer the market for a striker the striker market was quite small. Next summer, even if Mbappe does go to Madrid, it's going to get bigger. There's going to be more options around with the main one, Haaland. Also, I would think Ronaldo going to United has maybe scuppered Kane, especially if he's going to be there for 2 years, we think. Given that, I don't think United are going to go for 29 or the following year, 30-year-old forward. Well, I mean, who knows, given what's happened with Ronaldo. City, it feels like, from what I'm told, Guardiola was very keen on Kane because he wants a number 9. But a lot of other people at City weren't as keen. There was some slight reservations about, despite all his goals, how he would fit into Guardiola's approach. And also, the bottom line, paying that much money for a 28-year-old. And funnily, one agent actually raised an interesting point to me that's apparently doing the rounds, in those sort of circles, which is City are in a position of such financial superiority now, and they're champions from last year. And while they do need a number 9, part of their business is it's not just about improving their own team, as happened with Grealish and could have happened with Kane. Apparently, it's also about not allowing rivals to get stronger. So with Grealish, they knew Manchester United wanted him. There were murmurs that Liverpool might have a look, and they did a few years ago. So they basically had to act him. We'll stop anyone else getting him. We're getting him. And with Kane, when they found out there was no competition for Kane, that was another reason they kind of cooled off.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's weird now actually because of the age he's at. There's almost more pressure than ever for Kane to have a 25-goal season this year, just to almost prove going into next summer, hey, look, I'm still one of the top strikers in the world and worth shelling out for.
Insane. Has to keep himself in the shop window with that sort of thing, you suspect. Miguel, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for joining us.
No problem. Cheers.
Miguel Delaney there, Chief Football Writer with the London Independent, on the line. You're listening to The Football Show, and Football and Off the Ball is with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit gamblingcare.ie. I should say, and a quick reminder, that as always on a Tuesday, there is a new episode of The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, and it's out right now. This week they are, of course, discussing Tyrone's victory against Kerry over the course of the weekend, and it's available exclusively on the OTB Sports app right now. So go download the app if you haven't got it already. We'll be back right after these with former Republic of Ireland manager Brian Kerr.